John Kay is with the Louisiana chapter of Americans for Prosperity. Mr. John, Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us.
Happy New Year. Thanks for having me this morning. And Erin, I love your optimism about LSU football. I don't know that I share it, but I love it.
Are your panties in a bunch this morning? That's what I just really want to know.
They're not in a bunch. I have just one fact check from yesterday's interview with Senator Adley not even a fact check, just the rest of the story that I want to point out. But in addition to that, I have some good news, some good things that we might be pursuing this year.
Well, John, pardon me. Let's start here. We had Representative Alan Seabaugh on a few days ago, and his contention was at the very beginning of our conversation, he said, if there is a fiscal cliff, it's John Bel's fault and nobody else's. Do you agree with that?
I don't know that I agree or disagree necessarily. I think that there are a lot of reasons why a fiscal cliff could exist this year. One of them being the fact that when the state legislature raised taxes a couple of years ago now, they did it on a temporary level, so they set themselves up for this. What Representative Seabaugh is talking about, which is the part that I don't disagree with, is the fact that the budget has in fact grown. The state general fund portion that Senator Adley was talking about yesterday has in fact grown since Governor Edwards took over, since he became governor. And typically on a year-to-year basis, the state budget will grow some. But what Senator Adley said yesterday is that it's smaller now than it was in 2008, the state general fund in particular. So in 2008, it was $8.8 billion, and this year it's $8.7 billion. And he's accurate. The problem is last year, or 2 years ago, that budget was smaller than 2008, and every year after 2008, up through 2015, 2016, the state general fund was smaller. So it shrunk back after that 2008 number and then jumped back up to where it's close to 2008. So Senator Adley didn't tell a lie yesterday. He just didn't give you the entire story. He dropped about 7 or 8 years out of the equation.
The part that, and when you were listening, and we appreciate that, the part that probably just had you coming out of your shoes was when he was talking about, and this year's Louisiana budget is, what,
28.7 billion,
and it's up $1 billion or so from last year, maybe a little bit more. And he said,
that's a good thing.
That's a good thing because we're getting more federal money that can be redistributed. That's my phrase there at the end. But when he said that, what were you thinking about?
Federal money is not free money for two reasons. Number one, it's not free money because we do have to pay taxes for that money, so it's still taxpayer dollars. But number two, almost every time the federal government sends money to Louisiana, it's not a gift to the state government. The state government then, at that point, the federal government gives us, say, $4. The state government has to chip in $1. So in order to bring that money down, a lot of the times it will necessarily grow our state general fund portion of our budget, where we have to spend more to get that money from the state government. So yes, the federal government. The federal government is sending us more money, but we have to pay money to get that money. We have to put up a state match to pull those dollars down.
Not to mention all the strings that are attached, right?
There are a lot of strings attached, whether it's highway dollars that have some strings attached.
Education money?
Some of it's education money where you have to abide by federal rules, or even on Medicaid expansion where we're pulling money down and we have to live by the federal rules in that program. Not to mention the fact that we have to chip in a state share, which is incidentally going to grow over the next couple of years, the state share of Medicaid expansion. And that's something that will be reflected in the near future, where we have to chip in more than we currently are, and our state general fund is going to go up as a result of that as well.
So we have folks on one side of the aisle, primarily the Republicans, saying John Bel wants to raise taxes no matter what, a rose by any other name, in this case a stinky rose by any other name. And yet John Bel and his minions are saying, no, it's going to be revenue neutral. Clear that up for us. What is the plan that John Bel wants, and what do you think that the legislature is going to come back with, if a plan at all?
I think Governor Edwards has put out a general idea of the direction that he wants to go this year. And he's correct in that it's revenue neutral to the tax increases that happened 2 years ago. So it's revenue neutral to that number. So the taxes that we were promised would drop off, it's revenue neutral to that. the real question that I have is, at what point in time are Republicans in the state legislature, Democrats in the state legislature, and the governor going to have a legitimate, serious conversation about the future of Louisiana? And this is the one thing that Senator Adler said yesterday that I agree with, is the current system that we have, that we operate under on a tax level in the state, just isn't working for us. It's too volatile. On a year-to-year basis, we don't always know what amount of money we're bringing in as a state. And while I don't want state spending or state taxation to go up, I do want the state government to implement a tax system where they can easily predict how much money they're going to bring in on a year-to-year basis, and stop relying on a system that allows for mid-year budget cuts, mid-year deficits to pop up that have to be fixed throughout the year. I want something where we can look at a chart and we can say, this is how much our spending can grow as a state, because this is how much we're going to bring in taxes, and they're pretty certain about that number, which is not something that we've been very good at for the past at least 8 or 10 years.
Talking with John Kay, Americans for Prosperity. Let's talk about that, because the governor wants to clean up the tax code, get rid of all the tax exemptions. And I hear different things from different lawmakers, but if you get rid of the tax exemptions, some of it would be, I guess, medicine, food, those sorts of things. You're going to hurt poor folks by doing something like that. You're going to hurt everybody. But then when you do that, then you're going to add taxes on my cable TV, on other things the governor has mentioned. Is it really going to balance out in my budget?
I think that a conversation we need to have, and frankly, any conversation we have on taxation isn't going to be an easy conversation to have. But the conversation we need to have is, our sales tax base in the state of Louisiana is completely out of whack. So the question is, why do we tax certain things in certain parishes, or certain things on a state level that aren't taxed on a parish level, and make it so complicated? That's number one. Can we simplify it and make it the same from parish to parish and to the state? Make whatever you pay on the sales tax on the state level, you pay on a parish level. That's number one, simplifying it. Number two, can we broaden the sales tax base to cover more things? And Erin, maybe it is cable TV that we have to broaden that to, but to cover more things. The one thing I wouldn't want to cover is business input, the business electricity, things like that help businesses produce. That's just bad tax policy. You can look at the Tax Foundation's research on that. Any number of think tanks tell you that that's a bad idea to tax that. But to broaden it out to other things that the final user of a product uses. And if you do that, you can drop the overall rate from almost 10%. You can, depending on how many things you wrap into that, you can drop it down. And you can avoid taxing things like groceries if you want, or prescription drugs. There are a bunch of other things, whether it's in Representative Seaball and others may not agree with me on this, but you can tax things like legal services. You can tax other services that you get, which is not a comfortable conversation to have. But I think that as we move forward as a state, we have to have some sort of a conversation on, do we tax things like cable TV or legal services, or do we continue to have a high sales tax?
Let me ask you this.
Which one do you prefer to have?
Let me ask you this, John, and I'm not sharing any names or anything, but I know several business owners who may go, let's just say they go to Sam's to make their monthly purchase of things they use in their business. And because they're a business, they have tax-exempt status for lots of items. And yes, they may buy things for their home too, but they put it all under their business account. There's lots of ways around this that you think we could close that up without hurting business. I don't know what the answer is, but there's a lot of scams going on with regard to our sales taxes. And
it's made easier by a system that's not uniform across the state. So when you go to Costco in Baton Rouge to purchase those items, you may pay a completely different tax than you pay at Sam's Club in Shreveport. And the reason is not necessarily the rate difference between the parishes, but the reason is maybe Shreveport doesn't, or maybe Caddo Parish doesn't tax something that East Baton Rouge Parish taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just another thing that makes it more difficult to figure out how to lock down the tax system to make it a fair tax system that works for everyone. Not only do we have the highest sales tax in the nation, we have the most confusing and convoluted sales tax in the nation as well, where it's just not uniform. And there's been a lot of research and some bills that have come up over the past couple of years on this subject in particular. And I think that as far as being a business-friendly state, that's one of the best things that we can go after and that we can work on to just make it a simpler system, but again, a system that the state can rely on to say, okay, I know how much money I'm going to bring in on a year-to-year basis because I can easily look at a forecast and capture what those dollars are going to look like.